And staring at an audio file that is like 16 hours long.
Oh, man, yeah. No, thank you.
Right. It's the recording of a massive 2-day legislative seminar, and your boss tells you to manually transcribe every single word of it.
Which is just, I mean, you're looking at an 80-hour transcription nightmare at that point.
Exactly. And most of us would just, brew a huge pot of coffee and start typing. But there's this article by Aries Chan from Experience Beyond the Lens, and it calls this the hidden trap.
Right, yeah, the deeply ingrained false belief that labor inherently equals time spent.
Yes, exactly. So for this deep dive, we're unpacking that article to see how applying a technical edge to a traditionally non-technical role can just completely shatter workplace exhaustion.
Because we do that, right? We chain ourselves to our desks because we just assume that brute force manual struggle is the only way out of a massive project.
We really do.
But Chan looks at a Secretariat staff member who faced those exact 16 hours of audio. And instead of rounding up a dozen typists or whatever, they took a completely different route.
Let me guess. Python programming.
Yeah, exactly, Python.
Okay, wait, I have to interrupt there. Because if you're sitting in a purely administrative role, right, and staring down an immediate massive deadline,
Right.
it isn't deciding to suddenly learn to code the ultimate form of procrastination. I mean, it feels like an impossible distraction when the clock is ticking.
It totally sounds counterintuitive. But the key here is really the scope of what they learned. Because they didn't try to become, like, a full-stack software engineer.
Right, they aren't going to a coding boot camp.
Exactly. They just learned enough scripting to glue together existing tools and bypass their specific bottleneck.
Wow.
And by doing that, they compressed 2 weeks of grueling work into a single, highly focused 8-hour day.
Getting a 2-week job done in 8 hours is just an incredible return on investment. But how did they actually build this? Because you can't just, drop a 16-hour audio file into a computer and expect a perfect transcript.
Oh, you definitely can. If you try to feed a file that massive into a Python speech-to-text script all at once, the system's memory just gets completely overwhelmed and crashes.
The computer essentially chokes on the data.
Exactly. So the first mechanical hurdle they had to solve was figuring out how to break the audio down.
Which means they had to slice it up. But wait, how do you program a script to cut an audio file without, randomly slicing a word right in half?
That's the genius part. They programmed Python to detect the natural acoustic pauses in human speech.
Mhm.
Like the silences between sentences.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So the code looks for those quiet gaps,
Mm.
measures them, and then cuts the file right there. And this creates manageable bite-sized segments.
That is so smart.
Right. And once you have those smaller chunks, you could just feed them into an automated speech-to-text library.
And those libraries are basically mapping the sound waves of the audio against massive databases of human speech to predict the text, right?
Yes. Which means the mechanical shift here is really profound.
Yeah.
You're moving the heavy lifting of listening and typing from the human ear and hand over to the computer processor.
Wow.
Yeah, the machine handles the automated execution, and it just churns through those chunks continuously without any fatigue.
This changes your entire relationship to the task. I mean, completely.
Yeah.
Stop being the assembly line worker endlessly turning a wrench,
Yes.
and you suddenly become the factory foreman who's just, watching the machines do the heavy lifting.
The dynamic completely flips.
Ugh.
Because you aren't drained by all that grunt work, you suddenly have the mental energy for the final, most important phase.
The polish.
Exactly, the polish. The staffer used all that saved time to review the text, fix any complex legislative jargon, and just ensure the professional formatting was flawless.
So you're delivering a perfectly polished final product while everyone else is, still struggling with their first draft.
Yeah, exactly.
That fundamentally transforms your value to an office. I mean, you strip away the busy work and go from being just a worker to a high-impact asset.
It really proves that looking for recurring bottlenecks, those tasks that feel physically impossible to finish manually,
Right.
if you learn just enough tech to build a bridge over them, it pays off immensely. Modern skills just move the needle so much faster than endless hours of manual effort.
They really do. But it does leave you with a massive question to consider. If a single employee can now figure out how to automate weeks of manual data entry in a single afternoon,
Yeah.
how are companies going to redefine what an entry-level job even looks like once the busy work disappears entirely?
That is a really good point.
Definitely something to think about the next time you're handed a seemingly impossible assignment. Maybe the answer isn't to paddle faster, but to build a better pump.